Thank you everybody for joining us today for the Printing Museum's Artist in Residence Artist Talk. This is our inaugural Artist in Residence group. So our very first one, the first time that we've done this program. By way of introduction, my name is Adrienne O'Donnell. I'm the Education's Program Manager at the Printing Museum. And if you've never visited the Printing Museum, we're here in Houston, Texas. That's my background right now is the museum lobby. We are a multifaceted institution where we have a museum that tells the history of printing. We have gallery space where we have special rotating exhibits. And the next one opening up soon will be February 18th, where we have our master prints from the Renaissance and permanent collections on display. And then we also have artist studios, which is what we are highlighting today that we have been making use of. So in fall 2020, we had our first cohort of artists in residence joining us. This is a completely new program for us. This is the first time. We thought we would have spots for 2 artists, but we were just so overwhelmed by everybody that applied. We have 4 artists that we wanted to have work in our studios and making use of the equipment. So we have Jimmy Van Luu, Killjoy, Caroline Roberts, and Shavon Morris joining us today, telling us about the artwork that they created. So this was so initially this program was going to be 3 months with 2 artists, and we ended up going with 4 artists and 4 months. And we were so happy to have them working here at the Printing Museum. So the artist studios that we have at the Printing Museum are a letterpress studio that we've recently expanded with the help of our studio manager, Jessica Stowe, who's done an amazing job expanding out that space. Thank you, Jessica. And we have our paper making studio, a book bindery, and then coming soon, we'll be expanding the rest of the printing studio for lithography, etching, and other arts. So this is our very first Artist in Residence program. We wanted to do this to create community space. And we are so overjoyed to have our artists joining us. I am going to be handing it off here in a second to Caroline Roberts to tell us more about her work. But we are going to be continuing this Artist in Residence program. We have had such a great time. We have a new cohort joining us. And if anybody else out there is interested in learning more, feel free to visit our website too to find more about the Artist in Residence program and see when we have applications for the next cohort. All right, Caroline, I would love to hear more about your work. I'm going to mute myself.
And I'm going to share my screen. Helps if I start on the first slide. So I'm Caroline Roberts. I've been living here in Houston for, I guess, 18 years. I was a resident mainly in the papermaking and the bookbinding studios, and the project I proposed to the Printing Museum was on the theme of prairie. Most of my projects in the past have mostly involved old photographic processes. Why isn't my screen moving? Okay. I can't, there we go. Old photographic processes used, I really like cyanotypes, and the ones on the right-hand side are lumen prints, which is using really old photographic paper, but wrongly. So you expose it outside without developing it. So it basically overexposes black and white paper. And then the project on the left was about environmental climate change, particularly focusing on here in Houston. And so that's the cyanotype process, one of the very first photographic processes. And I found a lot of my recent projects usually end up with a book involved somehow. So when I saw the Printing Museum's residency, I was like, that is perfect for me because I seem to be making more and more books. Oh, okay, clicking works. So the project I proposed was entirely based upon different aspects of the prairie. I wanted to make 3 books, or proposed to at least work on 3 books, celebrating the diversity of prairie or post oak savanna plants, as this area really is. And then the and that was with the diversity I was going to celebrate with a herbarium. And there'll be more on that later. And then the experience of prairie, which to me was a very new and strange thing, with a scroll that is going to like fold out like a vast horizon. And then the project that I've done the most on in the papermaking studio is one about regeneration, making handmade papers using the prairie plants and embedding plants and seeds. So it all started this summer lockdown like everybody else. I spent a lot more time. I've managed this 15 acres of crazy wild forest and grassland just outside Fayetteville since 2012, which was a major drought year here in Houston, or in this area in Texas. And so over those last 8 years, I've watched this grassland kind of regrow without me really making a huge effort on it. And over shutdown, I spent a lot more time there because it was one of the few places I could go. So I saw the plants grow this huge, I mean, some of them were taller than me. Okay, I'm only 5 foot, but that's pretty tall grass in my experience. And it seemed this year like they'd got higher and higher. And so I started making these in situ cyanotypes. That's what's going on these weird under glass here, is basically I'd squish down some grass onto the blueprint paper, the cyanotype paper, and make these cyanotypes without actually having to cut or damage the plants. And this is one of the results. And so because I'd been working on this all summer, once I saw the residency, I was like, I know what I'm making this about. I know exactly what it's going to be about. I'd also been making these pinhole photographs. So this is actually kind of a panorama, but made on film. So it's stitched together actually in the camera as opposed to later in the computer, as we're all used to. So you get these really great overlaps. So I wanted to talk about that with the scroll piece and bring some of this experience to it. I'll just go back a bit more. Why I wanted to do that was the more I kind of researched prairies and post-oak savanna, which is the kind of the Texas hotter version, I realized, or I came across things that told me it used to be, I have to look at my number here, 170 million acres of prairie and savanna in North America. Less than 1% of that still exists. And it was one thing I read that just gave me chills was it's described as a functionally extinct ecosystem because so little remains, which made me just sad. So I want to make these projects, my main goal is to give us a way to appreciate what's been lost and what still exists. And because perhaps then we'll value it enough to restore it, or as best we can. So a lot of my time was spent in the papermaking studio, and this mess on the left is what it looks like when you make paper out of grass. And on the right was the results, which I have the images of the finished paper a little later. And so, again, I also made ones out of recycled cyanotype. So I took tests and pieces that just didn't work, shredded them and made paper back out of them, and it came out this beautiful blue. And then on the right, both of these decals, the molden decal, which is the part that you kind of lift the paper pulp on, is I made those to fit sizes of paper that I want. The one on the right, in fact, is the size of a North American herbarium sheet. Apparently European and UK and every country seems to have their own standards, so I picked the one that belongs here. Oh, hopefully this will play. Yeah, this is a really super quick video of me making a sheet of paper, pressing it. It doesn't go this fast, I'm going to tell you that now. And then carefully lifting them out to dry. All right. Yep. I don't know why I have a big black bit at the end. So, as I said, I spent a lot of time in there making paper. On the left, the top section of those recycled cyanotype papers. And on the right is about half of the pages I made, which when I gathered them together, I realized it was a lot. And you can see like the little bits of grass poking out the edges of some of the sheets. And so what am I going to do with all of this paper? Well, the plan from the very beginning was to make a book of handmade papers with embedded seeds. And so I decided for the title page, it really needed to be a photogram of actual seeds. So on the left, we have a lot of wildflower and grass seeds that grow in this area. And on the right is the result. And there are also seeds embedded in that paper. And so this is going to be the title page for that book. And this is me laying it out and trying to figure out how to balance the images. I wanted to bring in some of the pinhole photographs I took, some of the panorama shots I took in camera, as well as prints of grasses, known as photograms if you put the grass right on the paper. And then of course, all these different grass papers and some text, mostly things that I'd found. Thanks, Joy. Joy just gave me a little heart. Most of the text is quotes I found. I realized that, let me see, where is it? So this one on the left is a paper with goldenrod embedded in it. A lot of goldenrod grows in that area of forest and in the grassland. And I realized that everything I thought about prairie had come from reading Laura Ingalls Wilder as a child. And so that quote on the right about the enormous empty prairie is going to be in the book. I'm sorry, my phone is buzzing right next to me. I'm going to ignore it. And this is one of the photogram spreads that's going to be in the book. These are the actual pages. On this beautiful the handmade paper is just a dream to work with for photograms. It's very delicate, but it's just that those deckled edges and the texture to it is just fabulous. It brings character to the pieces as much as anything else. So I'm skipping over half the things I wanted to say. And so this is the stack of the actual pages that are going to be bound. I'm working at the moment on some issues with the cyanotype process in the paper for some of the things I want to do that I'm going to go into just a second. And then this is going to be the cover. That I mentioned there's a lot of goldenrod in the area, and that linen on the left-hand side is actually dyed. I hand dyed it with goldenrod from the area, as well as the cords. I'm going to bind over cords, pretty much like the image on the right, where the vertical lines coming up. I want it to look like grass. And then against this pale blue spine cover, it's going to look like grass against the sky, I hope. So I'm really looking forward to getting that finished. The card on the right is my test piece, like figuring out the stitching and how I'm going to make this work. And as I mentioned, the part I'm still working on and kind of figuring out some of the technical issues with or technical challenges, really. There always are. So these are cyanotypes. The bottom right is on handmade paper, and it's not working out the way I thought it would. The chemistry in the paper always have an interaction, and so with these particular sheets, it's not interacting the way I'd hoped. So I figured out a way, in fact, inspired by a printmaking process called shinkole, when you take a thin, translucent paper and you print it onto the paper and it bonds with it. Well, I'm going to do similar. So the large image is actually on a really lightweight paper that I'm going to be able to wheat paste in. So it'll sort of almost bond to the handmade paper, and I'll still be able to get that really sharp image. And the top right is what the negatives look like. The cyanotype process is a UV-based one, so it wants orange, reddish-orange negatives instead of black and white. Not what you'd expect, but that's what works beautifully. And so that's kind of in progress. I've figured out how I'm going to make this work now. So the next step is just steadily working through it. So I mentioned at the beginning that there were going to be 2 other books. The herbarium is absolutely an homage to Anna Atkins, who was one of the first woman photographer who made this beautiful book of cyanotype prints way back at the end of the 19th century. So it's definitely an homage to her. These are all, so when I put the plant on the paper, every mark it makes is a 1-to-1 scale. And so some of the papers are going to need to be, this one on the left is 1.5 times the size so that you can see the height of that actual grass. And for the tallest grasses, I've actually ended up with 3 sheets of paper that need to be attached to each other. So we will all fold back into the herbarium. So you'll be able to fold out and see huge grasses, then turn the page and see the tiniest little plant that grows really low down. And so going forwards, I decided partway through this, I was like, this would be good if I could get a full year of plant gathering. And so I'm going to continue this one, and it's hopefully be ready by the time we actually get to have an exhibition in the fall.
Yes, and we will be having an exhibition.
Yes.
I forgot to mention that in my intro. And so thank you for that reminder. Absolutely.
That's okay. And then and so I also ended up embedding some plants in paper for that book too. And then this is the scroll piece in its current form, which is kind of laid out, and I've decided the order, but there's a lot of binding, and it's going to be mounted onto silk and then bound into a scroll so it can roll up really small, even though it's very wide. Just like the prairie is wide. Thanks, Joy. I love your reactions. So really, the only other thing I have to say is thank you so much to the Printing Museum for this opportunity. Thank you to all the staff for their help and enthusiasm, but especially to Kathy Grinnell and Adrian O'Donnell for their very patient lessons on paper making and then some book binding. Thank you, Adrian. And also for the time and space just to explore a single idea in depth. That's invaluable to have things like this residency to just force you to focus and pick one idea and stay with it. Because I'm a bit of a bright new shiny thing kind of gal. And more than that, just the new skills I've learned and the appreciation for the gorgeous deckled edges you get when you make your own paper like these ones. And that is my last image. So thank you, Printing Museum. It has been a wonderful experience.
Thank you, Caroline. It's been a pleasure having you.
Gotta remember how to get out of stop share. There we go.
And up next, we'll have Jimmy Van Luu.
Ooh.
Don't forget to unmute yourself, though.
Okay. Let me do this. All right. Hi. Okay. Are we good? Everyone see this?
Yeah, it looks great.
Okay, great. So yeah, I'm going to be talking about the work that I did during the residency. And I've been thinking about this word, unlettered. It came up as I was thinking about the stuff that I was doing during my residency. And if you see my name right here, it's kind of a uncomfortable typesetting problem because I am Vietnamese American. My parents are refugees from Vietnam, and I'm their first and only American-born child. And they really wanted to give me an American name, and the most American name that they could think of was Jimmy. And if you notice the white parts in my name, the diacritical marks and the letter J, those don't exist in the Vietnamese alphabet. And so I kind of have a name that can not really be typeset fully in either language. And that kind of tension is the thing that I've been thinking about during this project. And I've thought a lot about this word unlettered, And it's, as you can see, the use of the word unlettered has kind of dwindled over time. But it means that you're poorly educated or illiterate. Um, and I think it's interesting that we make this connection between knowledge and education and letters. And as a graphic designer, that's my training and my trade. And so I end up thinking and dealing with a lot of letters. And Vietnamese was my first language, but in many ways, I'm quite unlettered in Vietnamese because I can only speak at maybe like an elementary school level, and I can't read or write. But it's quite the opposite with my second language, which is English. Um, and I'm rather lettered in English. As a graphic designer, I mainly deal with words and images, and I come up with ways in which we see language and how we depict language, and I construct relationships between written words and people. Um, and in my kind of artistic practice, I try to think about the relationships that we don't typically have with words and letters. So typically we see words and letters at the scale of the page, like in a book, or at the scale of a city. But we never really experience words at the scale of what I call the body. You don't walk through a word. You can't, you don't hug a word. You don't see letters like that. And so in my artistic practice, I try to complicate our relationship with letters. And so this is a project in which the letters are made out of grass. They're living, they get mowed down. You can't see them. You can't really perceive them at the scale of the body when you're walking through this field. And really the only way you can see it as a word is from above in the sky, which is not a view that most people are privileged to. Um, and so I try to think about how we see or don't see words, how they're invisible or they become visible at certain times of day or in certain light. And this is another large scale sculpture that I just completed. And there are letters on here, but they're clear. And so you can't really see them all the time. And this is my most recent project, which is a publishing studio called Riso Riso. And I make publications and I collaborate with other artists, designers to make books, and we distribute them. Shout out to some friends there. But in making these kinds of books and zines, I'm also trying to think about the ways to complicate our reading of language and the structure of language. So I make books that kind of have to perform in a way. And one of the most recent books I made, which got me thinking more and more about the project that I did during my residency, is I've been thinking about calligraphy and the marks that pens make. And at the same time, I had been listening to this Vietnamese book on tape because I can't read Vietnamese, but I can understand it. And I've been reading this book in which the main character is a woman whose husband has just died. And she's devastated because everything around her reminds her of him. And so she tries to go on a journey to escape the land and the earth and the objects that remind her of her husband. And she goes out to sea because she can't bear to be connected to land. And there's a point in the book where she says that everyone that I will see on this boat won't know it, but it will be the first and last time that they have a conversation with me, because in 3 months I will be dead. So we learn that she's going on a suicide mission, and she's going to end her life because she cannot bear living. And there is a whole episode in the novel where she's going in search of a journal, a blank journal, to write down her last words in a way. And this is a quote from that. Oops. Sorry. And she says, I have to go and look for myself, to write myself down. I have to be able to see myself and read myself. I have to be real so that my death is real. And so she makes this really interesting connection between her existence and being able to see her life written down in words. And when I started my residency at the Printing Museum, the first thing that I did was I looked through all the available words and letters that I could work with. And this is one of the joys of being in the Printing Museum for me, is that there's cases and cases of letters that are just sitting there waiting to become words. And it's maybe a little bit overwhelming to see this amount of type. But this is, all this type is, it's embodied. It doesn't live in a folder on your computer, but it has to be stored. It takes up space. It's heavy. It has to be sorted when you use it. And you kind of have to go digging through the collection to pick out the type that you want to use. And sometimes certain typefaces don't have all the letters that you need to even typeset a full sentence. And so there's all these kind of inherent complications of language that are in the type collection. But what began to interest me was that this type collection, because it's Western, is missing key characters or key letters that are in the Vietnamese alphabet. And so the letters in orange are modified Roman letters that are in the Vietnamese alphabet. And you'll see that it's missing certain letters like J or Z. Those sounds are made by other letters or signified by other letters in the Vietnamese language. And so you have these missing characters, one, and then Vietnamese is a tonal language. And so when the language was Romanized, the tones are indicated by diacritical marks. And so on top of all of these letters, all of the vowels, you can also add diacritic marks, and there are 5. And so reading and writing is difficult, and letterpressing Vietnamese is impossible. And my proposal to the residency was about thinking about these strip malls in so-called Chinatowns that have popped up all over America. And what I've noticed growing up going to these is that there's a very deep sense that your culture is only related to food. And so most of the things that are in these strip malls are supermarkets, restaurants, cafes, but they lack, I think, some of the other aspects of culture, like reading, writing, literature, the arts. Those kinds of things are never really represented as worthwhile, maybe, or as businesses, or as places of engagement. And so when I go to these strip malls, I tried to spend a lot of time when I was in Houston, in the Bel Air neighborhood of Houston, which has one of the largest centers of Asian businesses. And this is something that kind of sparked a thought for me. I looked at these want ads like that are posted by people at, kind of outside the supermarkets. And if you notice this one says like need a nail technician, but they're always looking for people. And the Vietnamese word for help wanted is gang người, which means need person. Literally translates to need person. And you see that word pop up all over, and I got to thinking like, well, what kind of person? What kind of person do you need? Are there qualities when we're looking for a want ad? And I began to think about the words in Vietnamese that I do know. Like my vocabulary is not very wide or deep, but I kind of tried to make a catalog of the kinds of words that I know in Vietnamese. And most of them, it turns out, are words used to describe people. And I think when I was growing up, my parents always mostly talked about like, this is the kind of person you want to be. This is the kind of person you don't want to be. And these were the most common kinds of words that I heard in my house growing up. It wasn't words describing how to feel. It wasn't words describing how to analyze art or anything, but it was words about what kind of person you are or aren't. And so in one of the very first things that I did was that, I kind of find the act of typesetting wood type in particular really meditative in a way. And so I started just doing this exercise that I thought would just not really turn into anything. But I thought that I would start by typesetting these words to see where that would take me. And as you can see, the process of typesetting, if you've ever done it before, is it's kind of slow. Sometimes it's frustrating. So this is a video of me typesetting just one word by myself. And then the smaller video is a time lapse of Jessica Snow helping me typeset my largest poster that I made at the end of my residency. But the lockup looks like this. And, like I'm almost a little bit embarrassed to show these lockups because they're not that good. I feel like a letterpress expert might be like cringing right now. But the process of working with letterpress, I think it makes the words kind of real to me in a way. They're kind of embodied as physical objects that require jamming little pieces of paper in there so that they will stay. You have to kind of contend with the physicality of the object that you're printing. And so it seemed like a very appropriate kind of context to be thinking about language for me. So these are the first prints that I made, and you'll notice that they all do not have the diacritic marks. And so one of the main kind of technical problems or design problems that I was thinking through is how do you add these diacritic marks later on? And so these are some of the words. This one is dễ thương, which means literally translates to easy to love. And then some of these words are not very nice. Like this, if you're Vietnamese, you'll know that some of these words are not very nice. But these are the words that my parents would say all the time, like, don't be this, be this. And it's interesting to sort of see the kind of graphic embodiment of these words for me. They kind of have been swirling around in my head only as sounds, but I've never been able to attach an image to them. And so seeing these for me began to make a different relationship between me and the Vietnamese language, in which I lacked so many letters. And these also gave me an opportunity to use the type collection extensively. And so pretty much all of the images that you saw at the beginning of the type collection, I've used all of those. And it's kind of nice, I think, because these, I'm gonna guess that these letters and this type has never been used to say these words before. And so in a way, this is the first time that these letters are being used to say and speak in a new language. And now we have these posters as a kind of embodiment of that existence. And this is my final poster that I did at the residency. This is like my penultimate lockup. And this one is a poster about the new year, the Lunar New Year, which is today. So happy New Year, everyone. And during the Lunar New Year, it is a tradition before you get your red envelope of money that you say these, I guess, like New Year's greetings, but the greetings are always like these outrageous wishes that you wish to your family and friends. And so this poster is a list of these kind of outrageous wishes, like they're like yang so như ý, which means all of the things, everything in the world ever will go your way. Oops, sorry. Or tiền vô như nước, which means may money come into your life like water. Or tỷ sự như mơ, which means a billion trillion things in your life will be like your dreams. And so yeah, and so these are the kinds of outrageous things that you that are maybe unachievable, never achievable, right? But these are the hopes and dreams that you want to start off your year with. And so now that I've made all these posters, I'm still in the process of working on designing the accent marks or the diacritics for every letter. And every typeface that I've used, which is kind of a monumental task because I first have to, sorry, I'm trying to get to the next slide. Okay, so I kind of have to study each typeface and think about the graphic qualities of it and design the missing part. And so in these designs, I'm trying to complicate a little bit the relationship of the placement of the diacritic marks. Because when you're typesetting all in caps like this, there's no space for the diacritic marks. And so here I've kind of set them over and inset them into where the spacing would be. And in this instance, I've run it back through my risograph machine to print on top of the letterpress print. And then I'm also working with, I don't know, I guess I'll call it applique, but it's cut vinyl that I'm applying by hand on top of the letterpress prints. And so I'm kind of going through that process and figuring out that process right now. I have quite many typefaces to design still. And that's it. That's my talk. Thank you. This has been an incredible, incredible experience. And I'm going to shut up now so we can have time at the end.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. And up next, we will have Killjoy joining us.
Thanks, Adrian. Hi, everybody. I go by Killjoy. I just wanted to thank the Printing Museum. Thank you, Adrian. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Debs. Especially thank you, Jessica, for just printing with me all day and your boundless energy. It's super inspiring. So everybody's slides was beautiful. Caroline and Jimmy, wow, Congratulations, that was really beautiful work. I would follow a graphic designer with my presentation.
Sorry about that. It was
So I will say for this talk that I was I'm not in my studio space right now. I'm actually visiting family. I have limited resources to work with. So what I will be sharing is some things that I already have on hand. And what I wanted to start off with was a video that shows my studio space as well as the work that I engage in. So as a working artist, the mediums that I'm most interested in are printmaking, mural making, and recently puppetry. So I will show this video to see what that looks like. Can y'all see that?
Yes.
Cool. Okay. Okay. And now it's just me, right? Okay. So I wanted to share my studio space and the kind of work that comes out of the studio space. I definitely reflect a lot on how our environment shapes so much of our inner world, so that our outer world and our inner world are very much linked. I don't know if you were able to notice in the video, but a lot of the imagery that I work with has become very text heavy. I didn't used to carve out letters in my work, but it was in this past year, actually during 2020, that I started incorporating text into my work. And so that was a very interesting aspect for me when applying to this residency with the Printing Museum, is that I would have text on hand that I wouldn't have to carve, because I'm so used to every mark is something that I carve and it's not already an existing thing. For my project for Printing Museum, I want to share this image. Let me see. Here it is. So I want to explain the origin of this image. Last year, when when the pandemic started to be known around the world and quarantine started, I was actually already in a residency in Cleveland, Ohio with Zygote Press. The residency was supposed to last for 3 weeks, but it ended up extending to 3 months because that was the beginning of quarantine. And at that time, at the beginning of anything unknown is the scariest time. So I didn't think that I could fly. I didn't know how to get back from Cleveland to Texas, where my home base was. And Zygote was kind enough to let me stay and support me in making work throughout this time. So when news started coming in about what was happening in the world, it was really scary. And I had an immediate reaction to it. I think a privilege of being an artist is that you're able to express this immediate reaction to things, and you're able to express it creatively. So, when we started being on lockdown for a day, for a week, for a month, I think in the beginning days when this was happening and people didn't really know what to think about it, I just really felt like I had to do something. So I had these MDF blocks, and like within a span of, I think 15 hours, I carved this block. I was thinking right now is a really scary time. And I was relying on what makes me feel grounded and centered and back in my home, which is self. And so I picked these 4 themes: crying, prayer, creating, and laughter. And I carved it really fast. Let me find a video. Wait, don't want you guys to see my messy desktop. New share. And I'm hoping I click on the right one. Let's see. It can't be that. Is it this? Don't look. Never mind. I'm not going to do that. Okay. No, that's my background. Let's see again. One more time. One more time. Okay, I'm just going to go back to this. What was I saying? Oh, fine. People can see my desktop. I pulled up my Instagram account because it's actually served as a very helpful log of my work, especially when I'm traveling and I'm not in my home base and I just need to access my work. So, so the block that I showed you that I carved, I have utilized it in so many different ways. So, can you guys see the screen?
We're seeing the block with the 4 is medicine.
Oh, that's not what I want to show you.
Sometimes it helps to stop sharing and then share again.
Okay. How's that?
Yes, now we can see your Instagram. Great. Yes. Actual joy moment.
Okay. And is it scrolling?
Yes.
Great. Okay. So here's the block that I did. And so it's a small block, and I repurposed it in several ways. I turned it into a paste up, which is something that I commonly do, where you print the block over and over to basically create a wallpaper, and then you just take it to the streets and you paste it up wherever you would like. I also turned it into stickers. So with the block, I put these priority mail stickers and I put them face down, and each pass would yield me 4 of these stickers that you also just walk around on the street and post up wherever you would like. So when I applied to the Printmaking Museum residency, the project that I had in mind was to create a poster series helping people take action, because we're still in this tumultuous time. There's so much uncertainty, and people clearly have a desire to be active and to do something, but they don't always have the resources nor the knowledge or information to know exactly what to do or how to move forward. And so I thought, okay, I want to make a poster series specific to Houston, kind of giving resources for all of these things that you can help out with, whatever, you know, with immigration, with houselessness, with environment, just all these different themes. And then as I moved into the residency and I was thinking about this poster series, I mean, I had thought about it first initially as Houston, because I'm new to Houston. So I have been living in Houston for now 6 months. And I have such desire to build community here. But as I started thinking about this poster series, I didn't want to limit this information to be regional to just Houston, because I often like to think of projects that could have a more global reach. And so the project changed again while in residency, and I was channeling the medicine series that I had done the year before in Cleveland that I was sharing with you guys. So the new themes that I'm going to be working with are things that I think previously I had also taken for granted, you know. So this time of quarantine, this time of deep inner reflection has made me consider what I'm grateful for and what I have in my life, and try to focus on the blessings rather than the obstacles, and to overcome those obstacles with the blessings that I've been gifted. And so I did some research into, I did a lot of research actually in trying to get like, what do I want to narrow it down to this medicine, you know, with the time frame that I have here in the Printing Museum residency with limited supplies. I can't just do like, you know, everything can serve as medicine. And so I wanted to limit it down to what is important to me as an artist, because I can only speak from my experience, and hopefully reach like a global understanding of what we all feel is medicine. And so, you know, I put a poll out to Instagram. I did some research on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I came up with 6 themes that I think are really important to nurture ourselves. And those themes are water, breath, food, sleep, fire, and earth. So what I try to always do in my work is that I try to incorporate the 4 elements, which is fire, air, earth, and fire, water, earth, air, fire, water, earth, air. Got it. And how that can manifest in our healing in so many ways. And then also with food and sleep. So, you know, a lot of conversation that has taken root, at least within my communities, is the importance of rest and of avoiding, or actually like displacing ourselves from the rat race that we've become so accustomed to, especially pre-pandemic. And then pandemic put a pause on so many things, and we had to restructure of how we think about work and how we think about communicating and how we think even about existing. And rest is such an important medicine. If we don't rest, we don't recharge, and we're just constantly on go, 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 then what we deliver to the world is very shallow, because when we rest, we're able to tap deep into our subconscious and into the ether that is the universe, and we're able to respond from a more thoughtful place. And and then things that, you know, I think are easily taken for granted, that perhaps in this time we're seeing how fragile these systems are, which is clean water, clean air, even clean and healthy food. It doesn't take much in the system to put to stop the process of our food chain, for example. And so I wanted to, obviously, what Jimmy was talking about with culture recognizing food as a huge staple to represent a people, you know, just having access to food, clean water, and clean air is so important that I think we take for granted, that these times hopefully are showing us just how fragile those things can be. And then I have also fire and earth. To me, fire is the basis of everything. Fire nurtures our creativity. And so one of the most healing things for me is when I'm actually out in the woods and I built a fire. And it's so amazing because, you know, in our daily homes, we're distracted by so many different screens. But when you're out there in nature and you build a fire, it could be the only thing you're looking at, and you can look at it for hours and feel totally rejuvenated afterwards. So anyways, I'll stop waxing poetic about all of these things. But my 6 themes are, so the idea for my project for Printing Museum is that I want to do something similar to my medicine series.
Hello. Yes, that's me. How are you doing today, Brandon? Good.
Okay. So for Printing Museum, I'm doing large scale posters that, and I'm sorry, they're all in my Houston home, and I'm not currently in Houston right now. But I'm doing large scale posters that are 24 by 36, and they're going to cover the 6 themes of water, breath, food, sleep, fire, and earth. And they're going to have the same format as these medicine series, with a graphic, with an image in between illustrating how I see those things manifesting. And my ideas for this poster series is to have a completed poster series at the end of it. So each set will have a series of 54, as well as paste ups. I am really interested in providing free art to people who otherwise may not have access to it. So aside from the poster series, I would like to do what's called a paste up wall. And that can look like, let's see, like this. So just going around Houston and finding a wall, whether it's a person who offers this wall or an abandoned wall, and just posting up this poster series of the different medicines that we can utilize in our life and hopefully not take for granted. Oh, here you go. It's just a wallpaper. Okay, that's what I got. So thank you guys again for sharing this time with me and putting up with my non-slideshow presentation. I will pass it off to Shavon. I'm really excited to hear about her project.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Killjoy, your work is stunning. Jimmy, Carolyn, this has been an incredible time for all of us. And so I just want to first say thank you to everyone. This has been a blast. So let me go ahead and share my screen. All right. I'm here. Can you guys see it? Okay, great. So I consider my art piece a community-based art piece, and it's called America's Honest Identity. And it was really intended to be a thoughtful kind of coffee table centerpiece. And then the intention was to use printmaking and stationery as a vehicle for critical discourse. So I really wanted a lot of conversation to be had over this art piece. And so within this project, you'll find truths and heart-stopping statistics, contrasted by really elegant printing techniques. And so here is just the initial photo of what kind of this box looks like. And like I said, it's a mini box, and so it's supposed to be set on a coffee table, and then there are stationary cards and pieces inside to really enjoy. And so before I continue and kind of go through my process, through this process, I have become highly motivated to transition from making traditional stationery, so invitations and greeting cards, which this was my work prior. I did a lot of wedding invitations and greeting cards and stationery. And so I did have a business where that was my primary means, was to, I had clients and things like that. And it was the onset of my passion for paper and for print and for printing techniques. And so I'm excited to have transitioned from that, close the business, and just moving into this as a complete art form. And so, yeah, and like I said, I just want to make pieces that embody culture, and while also functionally serving the community and initiating conversations. So as you open the box, you will find some pieces that have been blind pressed. And so this technique is considered blind pressing. Let me see if I can zoom in a bit. And it's called blind pressing because ink is not used. And so incorporating debossing techniques throughout was really important because I wanted to enhance kind of the prints and bring attention to these design elements. And so with texture being an important part of our interaction with art, I really wanted people to enjoy holding these cards while also reading kind of the statistics and the facts. However, to accomplish this goal, it was very difficult. Now, in addition to kind of determining what machine was best to use, let me make sure I'm centered here. In addition to determining what machine was best to use, and Jessica, first of all, Jessica at the Print Museum is absolutely incredible. She can never be replaced. She is a master in disguise. Okay, she is amazing. And so she helped me through this. I see Jimmy like bowing down. We all have bowed down to Jessica because she is completely brilliant. And that is I'm not even hyping. Okay, I know. But so Jessica really helped me to kind of test and retest. And so all of these pieces of paper here that you see, so this 1 sheet, 2 sheet, 3 sheet, oops, now I don't know how I got zoomed in on it. Well, I guess I do it like that, but sorry guys, I zoomed in and then, okay. So this is essentially packing. It's the packing in the machine. So this right here. And so in order to get that deep impression, you have to kind of play with the packing and play with the timpin and rearrange certain things in that area right there to get it to press. And you also have to fine tune your paper and make sure you have a soft paper that's going to hold the impression. So this is, and sorry, I just want to go back to the other view 1 second. Don't tell me I lost it. Sorry, guys, bear with me. Oh, of course, this would happen to me. Here we go. Okay. So this is one of the other cards, one of the primary cards that is in the box. It says a man feels free if he first believes he is free. And so all of the cards have this beautiful line drawing to kind of embody what either the quote or the statistic says. This one was really fun because, utilizing this like strictly black paper and playing with the inks and doing white ink on top, I had a blast. And so let's see. The next one, and I'm gonna just try to zoom in a bit more and maybe do full screen mode real quick. Okay, so the next one is this was the very first print run that I did. And so the statistic here is, on average in the United States, a police officer takes the life of an American citizen every 7 hours. And so that is, again, a very heart-stopping statistic. And like I said, I wanted to pair it with the beauty of the paper and the beauty of the texture, to call attention to what's being said here. And you can find out more about that on fatalencounters.org. Next is a quote from the Ludwig Institute. So the Ludwig Institute for Shared Economic Prosperity, which tracks the percentage of the US labor force that does not have a full-time job, but once one, has no job or does not earn a living wage, found that the true rate of unemployment was actually 25.7% as of November 2020, compared to the 6% shared by the media. So these things are completely mind-blowing, and I feel that many people in our society are not aware of them. So what better way to draw attention than through art and, again, critical discourse? So most of the statistics were derived from really reputable books, which I used as source material, such as The American Crisis and Social Inequality by Martin Merger. And so these were all source material. These books, I'll just link it. This is the book primarily where I got a lot of these statistics and did a lot of research, and truly enjoyed learning so much. Next, I was a former teacher. I taught 5th grade, and so this statistic was really heart-stopping and heart-wrenching for me. The average American reads at a 7th to 8th grade reading level, according to the Literacy Project. So if many people in our world were more aware of things like this, what kind of systems could we change? What kind of things could we, what kind of impact could we make? And again, you can kind of see the texture of this like craft paper. Sourcing the papers was another really big element of my project. I did need to go for like thicker cardstock so you can have that impression, but also just the color of the paper and things like that were very, very important. Additionally, we have this quote, this one, I mean, this one I probably cried for 2 days about this, but a 2015 study in Boston found that the wealth of the median white family there was 247,005. You know what that says? Well, I'm an artist, I'm not a math person. Jess will tell you. Well, the wealth of the median Black family was $8. And so again, that was found in the American Crisis book that I just showed you, Writers of the Atlantic. So that's very scary and needs to be changed. And again, I was adding texture for visual interest and calling attention to important information. And this is all of the prints in that one box, so you can see everything up close. The goal is to expound on the box, to add more prints, to add more facts, but through this residency, this is what I was able to do thus far. And again, just some more shots of everything up close. And this is kind of the initiation. This is where it all started. You know, doing the line sketches, putting the research, kind of playing around in Illustrator. And here is the lovely Jessica kind of chiming in with her words of great wisdom and helping us to really navigate this. So again, a lot of planning, research, and drafting the initial design concepts were important. And then these are called polymer plates. And so this is what, after the design process, this is what had to be ordered in order to put that on the machines and get it running. So ordering polymer plates, they come in reverse, as you can see, and then you put them on there and it prints in. correctly, magically. um, and then this is just a quick video of me looking very ragged in the studio. So yeah, playing with the design, pulling out the papers, setting up that packing and that timpin, which like I said, was very much a headache. And my cards were small, so that was also hard. Inking. I used a lot of white ink, but of course you can do so many different colors. And so that's what you have there. I did a fun photo shoot in the studio because I just felt like, I don't know who I felt like, but I did a photo shoot. So ignore me for that. But I had a really great time just kind of being in the studio and really picking this up as my art form moving forward wholeheartedly. Here's where you can follow me on Instagram as I continue to grow in this process. And a last view of America's honest identity.
Thank you, Shavon.
Thank you so much.
So thank you all of our artists and our community as well for joining us today. So we have a few minutes for Q&A. If anyone has questions for the artists, feel free to unmute yourselves at any point and jump in here. You guys have been awesome. It's been so amazing seeing the diversity of the work that you've all created too. You know, just all these different facets of printing. And thank you for helping show that print isn't dead and that it is alive and vibrant and so fascinating and interesting.
So this is
I have
amazing.
questions.
I have not, I have not attended a presentation like this before, and it was amazing. I learned so much. I saw such beautiful work, and the presenters were outstanding. I applaud you. So thank you for the invitation.
Thank you for joining us. We have a question for Killjoy. How large a block do you work with when you are printing?
It depends. I like carving all sizes because I travel a lot. So when I'm on the road, the blocks can be like this big. But when I'm able to be stable and in a studio space, I usually go for about 24 by 36. And I printed larger when I have access to be able to print larger blocks.
Yes, and Jess, I'm going to ask you, what is the print size that we're able to do on our larger presses since we have the capability to do some larger printing?
Yeah, so we have a Vandercook 425, and Joy and I specifically, but also Jimmy and I have been working on it. The form size, the max form size is about 24 by 24 and a half. And the max paper is like 24 by 27, I think we found. So it can take quite a large piece of paper. Joy and I have been sending quite large pieces of paper through the press, and we're still working on completing hers. So that's nice because it accommodates our very large type. The museum has some really large type, and a kind of a standard Vandercook doesn't always do it justice. So I have a question. I have a list of questions, but Carolyn, can you tell us what a herbarium is?
Sure. Herbariums are used primarily by plant collectors and, of course, like things like the Kew Gardens in London has a huge herbarium. Sorry, we also have a cat in this presentation. And they are usually big sheets that generally have a pressed plant actually applied to the paper and stuck on with like a little identifying note saying where it was found, usually who by, who identified it. And for places like Kew Gardens and other huge sort of botanical gardens, that's the word I was looking for. botanical gardens use them as primarily as ways of identifying different plant specimens, and that's sort of the way that they go, oh, this is what this plant looks like. So they might have leaves, flowers, if they can manage to press those into them. Sometimes they'll have a little bit of root if that's something that really helps identify the plant. But mine are not nearly as complicated. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no. And
Good.
so is it primarily is it a book format, or is it like framed on walls?
When they're at botanical gardens, they're primarily these big 11.5 by 6.5 sheets in boxes. Anna Atkins made hers, and then it was all cyanotypes, and she then had it bound. I think there were 6 copies in total. New York Public Library has a copy, and they did an exhibition on it about a year ago, I think. And there are a few places that still have all those images online of Anna Atkins ones too.
Jimmy, was there any significance to the orange? You worked entirely and went through an entire can of fluorescent orange ink. I was just wondering if there was, whether you just really enjoyed it, or if there was some kind of significance to choosing that.
Yeah, I don't know. There was something really jarring about it, that I don't like, and energetic it feels in a way. Like it was just something that I found myself gravitating to, and I'm not sure why yet. I hope to know soon too. But yeah, some of the things I did during the residency was like kind of a little bit intuitive. Like, what does I don't know, like that can of ink just said, use me now. Yeah.
Shavon, how many more pages are you considering adding to that specific box, or are you starting a new I don't know, box? Or oh, you're on mute.
The original goal was to do like 10 cards in that box. And then of course, you know, it just got hectic. So I would like to add maybe a couple more, but also I have my mindset on doing some larger pieces too, and kind of just exploring beyond kind of the stationary size, that stationary size that I'm so used to. I am kind of interested in like, okay, now I can kind of venture out.
Yeah, that small size definitely presented some interesting challenges for it. I will say that I learned, you guys are all so kind and generous with your words, but I have to say I really learned a lot from working with all of you, and we worked through some really interesting problems together. Each of you who are in the letterpress in particular, we really, I think, learned a lot together. So I just appreciate you all for bringing your different perspectives into the letterpress studio. You were all, including Carolyn, you weren't in the letterpress studio, but I loved working across the hall from you. It was fun to watch.
Thanks. I love getting to come across and just watch letterpress. Like, I love those wooden type. Oh,
yeah.
But I couldn't get distracted.
For plants. Yeah, right. Another time. But I have to say that all the letterpress projects really brought something different into the studio space and allowed for a lot of transactional sort of growth and creativity. So I thank you all for bringing those things to our space as well.
Yes, absolutely. Been very inspiring. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. I think we'll wrap it up there. It's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you so much to our artists in residence, Caroline Roberts, Jimmy Van Luu, Killjoy, Shavon Morris. It's been a pleasure having you guys in our studios. You're awesome. Thank you for sharing your art with us. I put in the chat your Instagrams. If there's any other social media that you guys want people to be aware of, feel free to put your other social medias in the chat so people can follow your work. And to everyone joining us today, stay tuned. We will have their work on display in person at the Printing Museum. To be determined, we will have it sometime probably late summer, fall. We will get there though, and we look forward to having that shared and visible so that everyone can enjoy it. All right, thank you all so much. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.